Smash the like button if you also noticed how Paul Heyman didn't manage any of his ex-ECW wrestlers in the WWE. Paul allowed Rhino to drown in the WWE. It doesn't take talent to manage Brock Lesnar. Just saying.
Honestly, most people don't talk about this. I think that Paul Heyman might go down as the most overrated manager in wrestling history. Here's why. Let's talk about the triple threat match at this year's WrestleMania. Like I said, this match is dumb. It has no stakes. But at the same time, it does have stakes. The stakes are, whoever wins this match, Paul Heyman will side with that guy. That's what pisses me off. I'm like, bro, Paul Heyman is not all that. He's overhyped. He's overrated. So let me get this straight. Paul is the prize. Whoever wins, Paul Heyman will side with that guy. Who the fuck is Paul Heyman? I don't like this. This is like a love triangle. Now, Paul Heyman owes everybody a fucking favor. Rollins, CM Punk, Roman? What the fuck is this? So, Paul Heyman, he's more important than the World Wrestling Federation Championship? So, Paul Heyman, he's more important than Jay and Gunther? Paul is the prize. My God. Listen, I like Paul. I like Paul for what he did for ECW. But don't get it twisted. Paul was a shit owner. He was a shit businessman. But here's why Paul is very overrated. He's the Phil Jackson of fake pro wrestling. Here's what I mean. Roman already had talent. Brock Lesnar already had talent. Kurt Angle, Big Show, Rick Rude, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Paul Heyman doesn't want to grow. He doesn't want to build. He's lazy. Just ask Mr. Perfect Son, Curtis Axel. He doesn't want to mold. He doesn't want to create. He wants you to be a ready-made product, just like CM Punk, Brock, Angle, Roman. Hell, let's say he does side with Seth freaky Rollins. Man, that's worse. Seth is a Hall of Famer. What can Paul do for Rollins that Rollins hasn't already done in this business? That's what I mean. Paul, he's Phil Jackson. Anybody can coach Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Shaq, Odom, Pau Gasol, Kobe. Anybody can coach Kobe. Anybody can coach Michael fucking Jordan. Anybody can manage fucking Brock Lesnar. Hell, Brock Lesnar was better off without Paul Heyman. What about Cowboy Brock? Cowboy Brock was great. Listen, fun fact, I don't think Brock ever needed Paul Heyman. Okay, go back to his run when Paul and Brock broke up. I believe Brock was on SmackDown, and I think he was a good guy. But Brock was great without Paul Heyman. I'm talking about the Brock who left the company his last match against Bill Goldberg. He was single. Brock was a singles wrestler without a manager. He was doing just fine without Paul Heyman. Go back and watch Eddie G versus Brock Lesnar. Great match, classic, without Paul in his corner. What does that tell you? Paul is overrated. He doesn't want to grow, right? He doesn't want to build with you from the ground up. He wants you to be a ready-made product. That's why he's overrated. He's the definition of backstage politics. How did you manage Kurt Angle? How the fuck did you manage Big Show, Brock? Who else? CM Punk, Austin. How did Paul Heyman manage all these guys? Rick Rude, huh? Okay, let's go back to other fake pro wrestlers who failed under Paul Heyman. What about Nathan Jones, Charlie Haas, Shelton Benjamin, Parker Holly, A-Train, Heidenreich, Tommy Rich? Who else? I think it was Mark Callis, Mean Mark Callis. The same Mean Mark Callis who was released by WCW. That Mean Mark Callis. What about Ryback? You see, he's overrated. Like I said, bitch, anybody can manage Brock Lesnar. Okay, give Jimmy Hart Brock Lesnar. You mean to tell me that Brock wouldn't be a megastar? You mean to tell me that, I don't know, who else? Bobby the Brain Heenan. You telling me that Bobby the Brain Heenan cannot manage Roman Reigns? The same Roman who was the face of the fucking company? That's what I mean. Paul, he plays politics. He only wants to manage top guys. He doesn't want to grow. He doesn't want to be in that mid-card. That's why I don't like Paul Heyman as a manager. He's lazy. He's Phil Jackson. He doesn't want to build from the ground up. He wants ready-made guys. I don't like that. That's why he's overrated. Jim Cornette, he's better. Jimmy Hart, he's better. Sensational Sherry, she's better. There's a list of managers that are better than Paul Heyman. Paul is a lazy fuck who doesn't want to grow with his fake pro wrestlers. What about Taz? The Dark Patriot, Austin Idol, Randy Rose, Bobby Eaton, Arn Anderson. I'm not saying any guys that were great under Paul Heyman. He only wants to manage superstars with great upside. Paul Heyman is overrated. Ryback didn't need Paul Heyman. But what did Paul Heyman do for Ryback? He did nothing for Ryback, but he did a lot for CM Junk because CM Junk didn't need Paul Heyman. CM Junk was a megastar before Paul Heyman. That's my point. Paul is lazy. He's a bandwagon. Okay, what if Paul Heyman goes to, I don't know, Braun Breaker? Does Braun Breaker need Paul Heyman? That's lazy. Let's say Paul Heyman does manage Braun Breaker. I guarantee you this, Paul will take all the credit for the rise of Braun Breaker. I don't like that shit. I'm seeing names like Dennis Condrey, Randy Rose, Larry Zbyszko, Charlie Haas, Benjamin, Tommy Rich, Hardcore Holly, Eddie Gilbert, Jimmy Snuka, the Dark Patriot, Don Morocco. Those men did not need Paul Heyman. But it's weird how when people leave Paul Heyman, they become stars. That's odd to me. That's why Paul is overrated. Every time men leave Paul Heyman for his services, they become stars. Hold on. Rick Rude became world champion after dumping Paul Heyman. Steve Austin became U.S. champion after dumping Paul Heyman. What does that tell you? Brock Lesnar became world champion after dumping Paul fucking Heyman. What about CM Junk? CM Junk has been successful without Paul Heyman. That's what I mean. What about Curtis Axel? He did nothing for Curtis Axel. He did nothing for Cesaro. Because those men were mid-carders from the ground up, right? They were at the bottom. He sucks at growing wrestlers on the rise. He wants ready-made stars who were already top guys like Big Show, Angle, Brock, Roman Reigns. I'm like, bro, anybody can manage Roman fucking Reigns. The only thing Paul Heyman did for Roman Reigns was tell the world that Roman was a heel. That's facts. That's the only thing that Paul has done for Roman Reigns besides play backstage politics. Paul Heyman is the king of playing backstage politics. How else is he managing these big-time stars, right? He will go down as the only manager in history who always links himself with big-time stars. But the moment Paul gets with a mid-card guy, he fails. What about Cesaro? He did nothing for Cesaro because Cesaro was not a ready-made product. He still had tons of room to grow, just like Curtis Axel. Paul Heyman, he's a bus driver. That's what he is. Paul Heyman, he's not a chef. He's a bus driver. That's what he is, bro. Let this sink in. Paul Heyman will be remembered as the guy who managed Brock, CM Junk, and Roman Reigns. 3 men who did not need Paul Heyman. And that's fucked up. Like I said, he's not on the level of Sherry. He's not at the level of Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart, he grew with his talent. What about Sherry? She grew with the Harlem Heat. They were nobodies, right? They were nobodies. That's what Paul Heyman doesn't do well. He doesn't grow nobodies great. He sucks at growing nobodies. He sucks at growing mid-carders to be main eventers, right? What about CM Junk? Paul Heyman did nothing for CM Junk. He was already a main eventer. Those are the facts. The facts are CM Junk was already a main eventer without Paul Heyman. But Paul Heyman grabbed on to his fucking coattails. Okay, so what? What if there's a swerve at WrestleMania and Seth Rollins sides with Paul Heyman? That adds on to my argument. That puts me over as telling the truth. Paul Heyman, he only wants to manage top guys, and he wants to take their credit for their hard work that they done before he came along. That's what I don't like about Paul Heyman. Hell, I think Don Callis is better than Paul Heyman. Here's what I mean. What about Kyle motherfucking Fletcher? What about Take a Shit? Those men are young up-and-comers. Those 2 men are mid-carders who are not yet megastars yet, but Don Callis is grooming those two men to be megastars. Last time I checked, take a shit, he's doing just fine with Don Callis. He's on the rise with Kyle motherfucking Fletcher. Paul Heyman does not do that. He does not groom young talent. He grooms old talent who have been in the business for over 10, 15 years. That's what I mean by he's Phil Jackson. He doesn't want to grow a franchise. He doesn't want to grow a rebuilding project. Paul Heyman doesn't want to grow building projects. That's why Paul is overhyped. He's overrated. Don Callis, he's better than Paul Heyman. Don Callis wants to mold talent. He wants to grow talent. He wants to build up talent from the ground up. Like I said, Paul Heyman has a very overrated resume. All right, just look at the resume of Paul Heyman. Take out Brock, take out Roman, take out CM Punk. Most of Paul Heyman's guys, they either fail or they become stars the moment they dump Paul Heyman. That's not good. Like, people need to realize that Paul Heyman was a mid-card manager before Brock Lesnar, so that's why he's overrated. He's not Bobby Heenan. He's not Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart was a upper-tier mid-card manager and a main eventer, just like Bobby the Brain Heenan. I don't get it. Why do people think Paul Heyman is a god? Why is Paul Heyman a topic of discussion heading into WrestleMania? CM Punk wants to have Paul Heyman in his corner. Okay, so how is that a big deal? And now people are saying, oh, it might be a swerve. He might go with Rollins. So Rollins doesn't need Paul Heyman. That's what I mean. Paul is lazy. He only wants to manage top guys. He doesn't want to grow and nourish mid-card guys to become main eventers. That's why Paul is overhyped. Okay, here's my point. How come Paul Heyman always has first dibs on all the top main event talent who needs a manager? How come Vega can't manage main eventers? How come Robert Stone can't manage main eventers? But Paul Heyman always has first dibs on top talent. Why can't Zelina Vega manage Seth Rollins? How come Robert Stone cannot manage Seth Rollins? How come Paul Heyman always has first dibs on all the top main event talent like a Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, Kurt Angle, Roman, guys like that? Why can't Roman be managed by a guy who needs the rub, like a Robert Stone, for example, guys like that? All I'm saying is, me, Mark Callis, was a jobber when he was a Paul Heyman guy. But the moment me, Mark Callis, went to the World Wrestling Federation, he became a star under Paul Bearer, Percy Pringle. I'll rest my case.